So good morning, everyone. Welcome to Buddhism for Daily Life, coming to you from Vajrayana Institute in Sydney. So I hope everybody is safe and well, and I'm looking forward to sharing some more information on karma with you all. But let's just begin by settling and calming the body. So sitting comfortably, whether you're on a chair or on a cushion. Feeling at ease. Making sure your spine is straight. And let's just scan the body to release any tension that we find. And breathing normally and naturally, starting at the top of the head. And relaxing with each out breath. Moving down over the forehead. I've noticed sometimes when I'm leading meditation sessions, people sometimes frown when they're concentrating. So just check to see that your forehead is relaxed. And anytime you notice tension, imagine that that tension leaves your body on the next out breath. As you focus on the forehead, also be aware of your temples. Moving down the face, relaxing the muscles around the eyes. And relaxing the eyes themselves. Soft, gentle, the kind of gaze you have when you're daydreaming. Moving down over the cheekbones to the mouth. Relaxing the muscles around the mouth, the jaw, chin. Soft. The relaxed face of a sleeping baby. Relaxing the throat. Gently coming back to the top of the head and moving down the back of the head to the base of the skull. Moving to the tops of the shoulders, Often quite a lot of tension here. It can help to lift your shoulders up and drop them 2 or 3 times. Checking on the shoulder blades. Shoulders slightly back. Then travelling down the spine, all the way to the base of the spine. And coming again to the shoulders, tops of the shoulders, and moving down the front of the body. The upper chest, the diaphragm, and the belly. Be aware of your body sitting at ease. Contact with the chair or the cushion, solid, firm, stable. Then moving from the shoulders, down the arms, to your elbows. Elbows to wrists, wrists to hands, back of the hands, palms of the hands, all the way to the fingertips. Coming to the hip joint, moving down through the thighs, to the knees, ankles, tops of the feet, soles of the feet, all the way to the tips of the toes. And just feeling the whole body relaxed, peaceful, calm. Supported and safe. And then opening our hearts, moving away from what is often our normal attitude, which can be quite self-centered. So let's open our hearts to everybody in our huge, vast human family, everybody on this planet. I'm not leaving out the other living creatures too, that we share this world with. And having a very sincere wish that any benefit we get, any understanding we come to, by exploring the wisdom of the Buddha. May that be not only for our benefit, but for the benefit of all living beings. So thinking in this way. And we'll move on and do a few minutes of breathing meditation. And here our task is to merge the awareness with the breath, focusing on the breath as it enters and leaves the nostrils, or the rise and the fall of the abdomen. And whenever the mind wanders, firmly bring it back to focus on the breath without any judgment or criticism. Nothing else to do but merge the awareness with the breath. Just bring the awareness back to the breath. Do your best to merge with the whole in-breath and the whole out-breath. Not getting upset if the mind wanders, but simply noticing and bringing the mind back. We can't breathe in the past and we can't breathe in the future. So when we're focused and merged with the breath, we are in the present. because body and mind are interconnected. By keeping the body still, it helps to calm the mind. So have a little stretch, have a sip of your drink. So we've been talking about the four thoughts that turn our mind towards the spiritual path. And we started with the fact that we have a human rebirth. And this is called in Buddhism actually either a precious human rebirth or a perfect human rebirth. So it's more than just being born human. It means being born human and having an interest in the spiritual path, having met the spiritual path, and being able to understand it and do your best to put it to practice. There's another very important point that we need to take into consideration, and that is that the fact that according to Buddhism, our essence, the essence of our mind is pure and clear and uncontaminated. And it has at its core, this inexhaustible well, if you like, of loving kindness and compassion and wisdom. And all of our delusions are adventitious. They're not part of this this innate purity. They're obscuring it, but they're not one with it. So being human, having a precious human rebirth in the context of our spiritual practice is just astonishing, really, because there are many, many people who have a human rebirth but don't have interest in the spiritual aspect of life, or have no contact with the spiritual aspect of life, or are caught in a cycle of poverty, or they may be in an area where there's constant war and conflict. They can be somewhere where following a spiritual path is not possible, or where you can only follow one particular path and anything else is prohibited. There are countless obstacles to having the freedom and the interest and the ability to follow a spiritual path. So we should all rejoice that this is our situation at the moment. And the second point is that concerning death and impermanence. So we have this perfect human rebirth, but the reality is that death could come at any time, and therefore we should not waste the time that we have. We should do our best to develop our loving kindness, our compassion, our wisdom, and do our best to understand our mind and how it works, to engage in positive actions as much as possible, and to avoid negative actions, to develop equanimity, and so on. And then we come to look at karma, and we started looking at karma last week. So let's just do a little recap here. So karma means literally action. And it means, if it means action, it means cause and effect. And on a very subtle level, it means intention, because before we engage in an action, we have to have an intention. Before I pick up my cup to have a drink, I have the intention. I'm thinking, oh yes, a sip of chai would be very nice now, so I pick up my cup and I have a drink. And there's quite a few things we need to understand about karma, and I think probably one of the most important is that it's not punishment. We very often think, if we haven't studied the Buddhist view on karma, we tend to think of it as punishment. You often see something on Facebook and somebody has done something that's not very nice, and people will make comments like, well, karma will get you. So we really need to throw that out. That is, it's not like that. Karma is a natural law, but it's not a being sitting up there watching us and seeing when we do something negative and then punishing us, or if we've done something positive, rewarding us. It's a natural law. It's completely impartial, and it applies equally to everyone. So the first point is that karma is definite. That means that a positive action will definitely bring a positive result, while a negative action will definitely bring a negative result. Okay, that's 100% certain. If you take the analogy of a seed, if you plant tomato seeds, you're going to get tomato plants. You're not going to get a pineapple. You're not going to get an apple tree. If you plant chili seeds, you're going to get a chili plant, and so on. So we need to understand that positive actions will bring positive result, negative actions will bring a negative result. And that's always the case. The second point is that karma increases. So if we cannot see karma, but what happens when we perform an action is that action leaves an imprint on our mind stream. And a useful analogy is to see that imprint as a seed, right? And then if you've got a seed and you don't do anything to destroy it, let's take an acorn. Eventually it becomes an oak tree, and from that oak tree come many more acorns and many more trees until you've got Sherwood Forest. So karma increases, yeah. That if we don't destroy the acorn or harm the acorn, it will bring about a result, yeah. If we protect it, nourish it, it will grow faster. So if we don't engage in an action, we can't have a result. So if there's no action done, there will not be a result. The final point is that karmic imprints don't just disappear, they don't just fade away. Those karmic seeds stay on our mind stream until they meet the right conditions, and then they will bring about happiness or suffering in dependence upon the intention, the positive or negative intention behind the action. There's a lot of noise for me outside. How is it going for you? I might just get up and shut the window. Can I have some feedback on that? I don't know if it's a chainsaw or is that disturbing you? Anyhow, I'm just going to shut the window. So are there any questions? Oh, hi, Lucy. Good. I've closed the window. I hope that helps. It's probably louder for me than it is for you. That's the best I can do. So are there any questions about these 4 points? Do they need clarification? Please don't be shy to ask questions because it's really important that we understand how karma works. So never think this is a silly question. Yeah. It also keeps me on my toes when I have to answer questions. So karma is definite, certain. It increases. If there is no action, there will be no result. And karmic imprints don't just fade away. They stay on the mind stream from lifetime to lifetime, if necessary, until they meet the conditions that will cause those karmic seeds to ripen. So there are limitless positive and negative actions of body, speech, and mind. And in general, they can be condensed into the 10 major non-virtues and their opposites. And although not all positive and negative actions are included in these 10, most of the gross negative actions are included in the 10 non-virtues, and most of the strongly positive actions are included in the 10 virtues. So the practice of the 10 virtues and giving up the 10 non-virtues, this is the basics, this is the foundation for morality, for ethics. And they say that ethics is the foundation of the spiritual path. Let's have a look at some of the effects of negative karma. So the reason why we're focusing in the beginning anyhow on the negative, of course, positive actions bring positive results. But what we're really concerned about is that we don't want to suffer. So in order to not experience suffering, we have to avoid engaging in negative actions. Yeah? So let's have a look at, negative karma. Let's have a look. Oh, okay. Hi, Caroline. Yeah, there's a few people that are having a little bit of a problem getting onto the live chat. And from where I am, of course, I can't really help very much. But I think there's a column that comes up on the right-hand side, and that when you type, at the bottom it says Vajrayana Institute and it says say something. So I think what you do is you just type something in there. That's if you're on the computer. So, yeah. Anyhow, try, give it a try. It's called, trial and error. I've had to learn a lot too, coming into this new way of communicating the teachings to the best of my ability. So just have a look. Let's look briefly at negative karma. So the 10 non-virtues are killing, stealing, sexual misconduct, that means any kind of sexual activity that is harmful for you or harmful for the other person. Lying, divisive speech, that means, causing friends to divide friends or to a group so that you create disharmony in the group. Harsh speech, so we know that that's negative. Idle gossip, that's a very interesting one. We engage in that one all the time. And we think that it's fairly harmless, but it can very quickly turn nasty. Just think about how, people are sitting together and maybe they bring up a particular politician and suddenly, we hate this person. It's very easy. It's very easy to fall into that trap so that we bring up aggression and hatred. We're not stopping to think that what we really don't like perhaps is this person's policies. Anyhow, that's another story altogether. But to differentiate between the person and the action. So we need to be very careful about idle gossip. Then there's covetousness. I love that word. It's quite old-fashioned and quite biblical, I think. Wanting something that doesn't belong to you. Malice. So malice, yes, that's mental covetousness, malice, and wrong view are all actions, negative actions that we perform with our minds, and they leave an imprint. If we walk around thinking malicious thoughts, if we think them long enough, we may actually engage in some action. And wrong views, so this is in the context of somebody who is committed to following the Buddhist path. So wrong views would be thinking, for example, that we don't believe in karma, we don't believe in cause and effect. We're not even sure if enlightenment is possible. So in order to follow this spiritual path, we need to examine it, and we need to see if it accords with reality, and then we take it on board, and then we trust it. It's like if somebody tells us 2 and 2 is 4, well, we need to check that. And once we've checked it, then, the rest of the maths that we do should be okay. I've taken a very simple example, but I hope you get the idea. So, yes. Non-virtues of body, non-virtues of speech, and non-virtues of mind. So if we create a non-virtuous action with intention, right? This is where things get a little bit complicated, but I want to try and keep it as simple as possible. Because in Buddhism we believe in rebirth, past and future lives, here we're talking about non-virtuous, but the principle is the same for virtuous, but every non-virtuous action that we intentionally create, motivated by a delusion and carried through and rejoiced in, becomes powerful enough to create what is called a throwing karma, in that if that negative karmic seed ripens at the time of death, it can throw us into a negative rebirth. So it has to have 4 factors. right? There has to be an object, an intention, the act itself, and a completion. So let's have a look. Let's take because it's the same for all of the non-virtues. Let's take the negative action of killing. So obviously the object needs to be another living being, right? There are some who believe that killing a human is negative, but that it is acceptable to kill animals or insects. This is a serious misconception because an animal values and protects its own life just as much as any human being, and an animal suffers equally by being killed. To kill any living being creates negative karma because of the suffering that it experiences at losing the thing it holds most dear, which is, of course, its life. So you have the intention, yeah? So the intention is you discriminate, you have a clear and unmistaken recognition of the object to be killed. If you intended to kill a dog and killed a cat by mistake, then a complete karma would not have been established because the factor of intention would not be complete. Now, this sounds really technical, and it doesn't mean that there's no negative karma created, right? Because you have still created the karma of killing, but it's not a complete karma. Because if you wanted to kill the dog because it was driving you crazy because it had been barking every night, for the last 6 months, and you killed the cat by mistake, you would be sorry because you didn't carry out your original intention. Does that make sense? Doesn't mean that you don't create karma by killing the cat by mistake. But it's not a complete karma, it's not a throwing karma. So you have, you've discriminated, you've chosen what you're going to kill, and then you have a motive. So the motive is a state of mind in which you fully intend to kill a living being. If you don't have the motivation to kill, you still create negative karma, but not a complete karma. Remember, complete karma means the imprint is going to be powerful enough to throw you to your next rebirth. An example would be if you accidentally kill a frog on the road, when you're driving, or insects hit the windscreen, So also there's the delusion. It's motivated by a delusion. The action is motivated by delusion. So it could be anger. You could be killing an enemy or an animal that irritates or frightens you. It could be attachment. You could be killing an animal for their meat or their wool, ivory, or other bodily parts. It could be ignorance, killing animals, believing that they are placed on this earth to be food for humans, and it's therefore not negative to kill them. Thus, you not only have to be aware of your actions, but most particularly your motivation as well, as it is the motivation which determines whether an action is negative or not. An action that is not motivated by delusion does not create negative karma, but you must be very careful in checking your motivation. right? So the act of killing, it's interesting. It can be, it can be by way of weapons or poison. There's many different ways, isn't there? If a group of people agreed on a plan to carry out a murder, each person in the group would collect the karma of killing, whether they were involved in the act or not. Interesting. Here, intention, yeah? If someone asks another to kill on their behalf, this person collects two negative karmas, that of killing and that of causing another to kill. A president, a ruler, or a general who sends soldiers to war collects the karma of every killing performed by each of the soldiers, as well as the karma of instructing them to kill. So now comes the fourth point, which is called the completion. The completion is when the other being dies before you do. For instance, if there were a gunfight, the old-fashioned cowboy movies, and you died before the person you were trying to kill, then the act of killing would not be complete. If the other person died first, your satisfaction at the result would complete the karma. Does that make sense? So, it would have to be something like a gunfight where there's a possibility that either person could die. One could die first, they could both die at the same time, and so on. But for that action to be throwing karma, the person that you are planning to kill has to die before you die, because then you've rejoiced that that person has died. Yeah. So if both people in a gunfight died at the same moment, neither of them would have a complete karma. It wouldn't be a throwing karma. It will still have an effect. It doesn't mean that, it'll still have an effect, but because the four points, the four branches they're called, are not complete, it's not a powerful enough karma to throw you to your next life. So it's a little bit complicated. I've tried to make it clear. Has anybody got questions around that? That's a good question, Carolyn. What happens if you kill a being in self-defense? So from Buddhist point of view, first of all, you would try everything possible to stop that person from killing you. So let's say you have a gun. Most of us don't know how to use guns, but this is hypothetical. So you have a gun, perhaps the other person hasn't, whatever, a scenario could be anything. So you have a gun. So you could, rather than shooting to kill that person, you could shoot them in the foot, which would probably stop them from killing you. If you could possibly run away, you would run away. If you're very, very evolved on the spiritual path and you saw that there was absolutely no way for you to escape, and there was no way for you to stop the person from taking your life, you would be able to die without hatred for that other person. But here we are talking about ordinary people, So most of us are not, we're not, great bodhisattvas. The best that we could hope for is in trying to defend ourselves, we try not to kill, and if we did kill, we would have very sincere regret. How does that sound? Yeah, I hope that makes sense. You see, if we've committed ourselves to this path, we are aspiring bodhisattvas. A bodhisattva is kind of like a spiritual warrior. And the further along the path we get, the more respect we have for the lives of all living beings. And if we look at the fact, living beings are like a desert full of grains of sand. So why should this particular grain of sand be more important than all the others? And it's, it's not black and white. It's not like that, because also, well, it's true. That point is true. If we take this one little grain of sand called me and consider it to be more important than all the other grains of sand, that is selfishness and arrogance, because every single life is precious. So in the context of this interaction where another person is trying to kill us, we value that person's life as much as our life. So we try to stop that person from killing us, because if they succeed, they have created this hugely negative karmic action that is going to lead to incredible suffering for them. So once we've reached that level on the path where we've embodied that, that's why we want to stop that person from killing us for their sake as well as for our sake, right? But as ordinary people, we may not be at that level yet. So as I said before, hopefully, if we did, in defending ourselves, we did kill the other person, hopefully we would have sincere regret. Does that make sense? It doesn't mean we condone the negative action. So let's look at another example so we can really get our head around these 4 branches. Here, we're going into a bit more detail about karma, and we're looking at what it takes for an action to be powerful enough to throw us to our next rebirth. And it has to have these 4 branches. So let's look at the non-virtuous action of stealing. So there has to be an object. This has to be something that has value and it belongs to somebody else. A piece of grass or some rubbish is not an object worth stealing because no one would mind losing it. So taking a worthless object does not create the complete negative karma of stealing. Obviously, there may be something that has sentimental value and not monetary value, and we would have to take that into consideration because sentimental value is often priceless, isn't it? So the intention, here we're back at the intention, it would be composed of discriminating, correctly identifying the object to be stolen. Stealing something from Bill, for example, while thinking it belongs to Fred, would not establish a complete negative karma. Okay, here again we have that same thing. It has to be a complete negative karma. Yeah. So we want to steal something that belongs to Fred, and we find this object. But it actually belongs to Bill. So therefore, it's not a complete karma because we wanted to steal from Fred. Yeah. So there has to be a motive. You must fully intend to steal. It's not just picking something up by mistake. And again, it has to be motivated by delusion. So attachment, wanting the possessions of others. This is the most common delusion with regard to stealing. Or we can steal out of anger, wanting to hurt someone with the pain of losing something that they hold dear. It could be ignorance, for example, like thinking that cheating on your tax is an acceptable business practice. Perhaps even a noble form of protest. Now there's the actual act of stealing. It can be performed by yourself or by someone on your behalf. For example, your accountant, if you're cheating on your tax. You can steal by force or by stealth or secretly and deviously, like with blackmail and so on. Nobody likes a bludger, so asking for someone else's cigarettes, if done continuously, becomes stealing. Taking a job by devious means that would otherwise have rightfully gone to someone else is also a form of stealing. Pressuring someone by browbeating them with continuous requests until they feel forced to give you something is another example of the act of stealing. So now the completion. The completion is being satisfied at having obtained the object. If you were to realize the fault of stealing and return the object, then the action would not be complete. For those who steal in a cunning way by borrowing something and continuing to forget to return it, the action of stealing becomes complete when they feel that the object is now theirs. That is, when they have totally forgotten any intention to return it. So there again, we've got those 4 points. The object, the intention, the discrimination, which includes, well, intention includes discriminating, actually identifying what you're going to steal. The motive, having this complete motive to kill, to steal. You fully intend to steal, and then you are impelled by a delusion, or you're motivated by a delusion. You're controlled by a delusion. That's a better word. Under the control of the delusion, you go ahead and you perform the action, and then you complete the action. So the people understand those points now, because it's important to understand the difference between a karmic action that can throw you to your next rebirth, which is called throwing karma, and other types of karma which come under the category of completing karma. So throwing karma has to have the 4 branches. There has to be an object. There has to be discrimination and motive under the control of delusion, and there has to be the completion. Then that action is powerful enough to throw you to your next rebirth. I might give a couple more examples, just so that we really get a sense of how this works. Let's look at harsh speech. So the object is any living being that can be hurt by what you say, right? So the intention is composed of discrimination, which means correctly identifying the object to be insulted. So if you aim the insult at one person, but it misses the mark and you hurt another by mistake, again, the action is not complete. You have to fully intend, to speak harsh or abusive words. If you insult someone innocently and you didn't intend to hurt their feelings, this is not a complete karma. Again, there has to be a delusion involved, attachment, so you want to insult somebody, For example, Here they're saying, if you desire somebody's wife, then you may insult the husband. Anger. So you want to use harsh speech to hurt an enemy. Or ignorance. You fail to realize the hurtful effect of your words and you just speak out uncontrollably through the force of habit. So there you go. If any of these delusions are in charge, then the result will definitely be a non-virtuous action. So the act can be speaking rudely, harshly, critically, abusively, cynically, insultingly, or in any manner hurtful to others. So the completion is when the other person understands and is hurt by your words. So there we have those points again. The object, discriminating, correctly identifying the object, having the full intention to speak harshly, motivated by delusion, then actually speaking harshly, completing the harsh speech, and if the other person is hurt by that, then that is a complete throwing karma. It's a little bit complicated, but I hope you people are getting the picture now. So I want to say something very important about karma right now, because, we may be beginning to feel a little bit panicky now, because we've been around, according to Buddhism, not only in this life, but since beginningless time, and we have created a lot of negative karma. We've also created a lot of positive karma. Now, the Buddha said the only good thing about negativities is that they can be purified. So if we go back to this analogy of a seed, let's say it's a negative karmic imprint, even if it's a complete throwing karma, the Buddha said the only good thing about negativities is that they can be purified. So if we can destroy or damage that seed, it cannot bring about its result. So one of the things that we do, I think I mentioned this last week, I've got a few classes going. I might have mentioned it in another class. But some things it's good to hear again and again. If it's a negative karmic imprint, we can destroy it through the process of purification. And purification also has four branches. They're called the four opponent powers. The most important one of them is to have regret. So if we've done something negative during the day and we're about to go to sleep at night time and it comes into our mind and we have sincere regret, that damages that negative karmic imprint. Doesn't completely get rid of it, but it damages it. And then the result will not be so serious. When we learn how to do the purification practices, it's said that we can completely destroy the negative karmic imprints. Okay, so it's important to know that. And I think I mentioned last week that I may take a day, a class, and teach the purification practice. So we shouldn't be careless about negative karma, thinking, oh, well, we can purify it and everything will be all right, because we end up with countless negative imprints on our mind stream, and being able to purify them all is going to take an awful lot of time and effort. And isn't it better not to commit negative actions at all if we can possibly avoid them? But it's important to what karma is saying to us is that when we suffer, we created the cause to suffer. How? Not because we're bad people, but because we don't understand about karma. We often engage in negative actions in an attempt to bring happiness. You know, when people rob the bank, they think the result will be they'll have millions of dollars and then they can buy all kinds of things and they'll live happily ever after. And we know that that is not the case. So if we really take on board the assertion that negative actions lead to suffering and positive actions lead to happiness, we want to be happy in our life, then we avoid negative actions and we create positive actions. So this means that we have some control. Normally we think, you know, when something good happens, we think, oh, good luck. Well, in Buddhism, there's no such thing as good luck. There's positive karma or negative karma, right? So if you want, you see, the Buddha didn't give commandments. The Buddha saw, you know, when he sat under the Bodhi tree and was able to see his past lives going back into infinity, he could see the workings of karma. He saw that positive actions led to positive results and negative actions led to negative results. So he said to people, if you want to avoid suffering, don't create the causes for suffering. If you want to be happy, create the causes for happiness. So that puts the ball back in our court. I am responsible. If somebody behaves negatively towards me, that's the pizza I ordered, figuratively speaking. It means that I've done something like that in the past, either to that person or to somebody else, and the chicken's coming home to roost. But remember, it's not punishment, it's not reward, it's cause and effect. So understanding karma in a way is incredibly freeing, because now we know what to do. And when negative things happen, we're able to accept, okay, this has happened. And rather than putting a lot of energy into why did this happen to me and it's not fair and I didn't do anything, blah, 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 and making ourselves feel miserable, we accept that it's happened and then we can work with it. Does that make sense? There's a few minutes left, and I'd like to leave this time open for questions. And it seems a few people are having problems with the live chat. So if I could have some feedback on that, I might ask our IT people if we could change this Wednesday morning class from YouTube to Zoom. and then we can see one another and we can talk. We can talk to one another face to face, so to speak. So yes, if you can give me some feedback on that, or you have any questions, I'll just sit here and do a little bit of breathing meditation while you while you try out the live chat. Yeah, that's an interesting point, Carolyn. It's very, very sad, the police officers who died. You see, I think people struggle with karma when they look at it as punishment. They say, what did these people do? They're bad. If we bring in this kind of judgment, they must have been bad people. Here we come back to that understanding that we all have this innate purity, but due to being controlled by a delusion at a particular time, we create negative karma, and that karma, if it's not purified, will bring about a result. It's just very, very sad. It is not punishment. And we're so used to thinking in these terms, I think, like there's some entity up there who's judging us. So karma doesn't judge. Karma is a natural law. Karma is not making how do I put it, a moral judgment. It's a natural law. And if there is actually if we want to blame something, we need to blame delusions. So at some time or another, we often fall under the control of the delusions again and again and again. We are motivated by fear, by jealousy, by pride. Now, when we perform a negative action, of course we have to experience the results. We can't just say, oh, I was controlled by a delusion. So, because karma works, right? So when we perform a negative action motivated by delusion, if we don't purify that negative karma, the result will come about. But if we can understand that the actual enemy is the delusion, then we can, how to say, we don't think of the results of negative karma as a punishment. And we understand that that all beings are essentially pure, but having fallen at some point under the control of a delusion, they engaged in negative actions and the results came about. So there's no, we're not judging the people. Does that make sense? Yeah, it's quite subtle, you know. I remember because we always think, yeah. We think in this way, you know. Might be it's something from the Old Testament, which you know, kind of. I think we take on that kind of mindset by osmosis. And I'm not knocking Christianity. I had to become a Buddhist to really appreciate what Jesus taught. But this idea of a, you know, a God who punishes and rewards, I think it's still embedded there. So we superimpose that idea onto karma. So yes, we should pray for these people, you know, to have a perfect human rebirth. And yeah, we need to, when we understand that the cause of negative karma is the delusion, it helps us, it explains why people behave badly. It doesn't mean that there won't be a result, but we can have compassion for them, because all of us at some time or another have come under the control of delusions. So are there any other questions? You know, when the class is here at the centre, people often have to leave because they have to be somewhere at a particular time, but we can go a little bit over time if people have questions. It's I'm happy to do that, because I think it's very important that we understand, you know, the teachings of the Buddha. And I do my best to explain them clearly. But of course, sometimes I make mistakes. So it's very good to check what I say. And as far as collective karma goes, you know, very often people that we have strong karmic imprints with, strong karmic connections, sorry, wrong word there, strong karmic connections with people, when we take rebirth, we'll probably meet up with those people again and again. That's the way karma works. Lucy, okay, some people excuse their racist comments by saying they didn't mean to hurt the other person. Are they right in thinking it was not a complete action? Mm-hmm. Okay, so Lucy, you know, unless they're Buddhist, they wouldn't even be thinking about a complete action. And if somebody's making a racist remark, we would really need to be able to see their minds. For example, you know, some people who come from, let's say, we're not allowed to say black and white, are we? I mean, you know, sometimes politically correct goes a little bit overboard. I think that we need to be very careful and mindful of our speech. So, you know, I always jokingly say that I have 3 vanilla children and 1 chocolate. I mean, all my kids are adults now. So my 3 boys, their dad was from Germany, so they're the vanilla kids, and I have my daughter is chocolate because her dad was from Bougainville. So, but we're not allowed to say black and white. So some people who are, but I'm going to use it here just, you know, to make it simple without any kind of, without there being any racism behind it one way or the other. So some black people get insulted if a white person says, "Where are you from?" So I think it needs to come back. It needs to come back, as it said, when we're talking about karma, intention. So I've spent, you know, some of my life in different parts of the world, and I've interacted with a lot of people, different races, different languages, different cultures. And for example, when I see somebody who's black, because I lived in the Solomon Islands for many years, I can usually recognize Solomon Islands straight away, living there for a long time. But if I say to somebody, "Where are you from?" it's, for me, it's with the intention to find out if they're from the Solomons, because they look like Solomon Islanders. And then, you know, we have this beautiful rapport because I lived there for many years and I can speak the language. And so for a comment to be racist, it means that you're insulting that person because of their race. So sometimes it's very obvious from the sentence and how it's said, whether or not it's racist or whether it's just simple curiosity. You know, I have a lot of friends from South America, and I usually recognize the South American accent. So if I say to somebody, "Where are you from?" and then, or I might put it the other way, "Oh, you know, you have a Spanish accent. Are you from South America?" So from my side, I'm wanting to connect with that person. Yeah. So it's very hard to see somebody's intention. We don't know whether they meant to hurt the other person. Yeah, Robin, that's a good comment. You know, it's hard to understand how what has been done in the past to cause such horrific events as the accident. Well, again, we should not think of it as a punishment. We've all been around since beginningless time, and all of us have killed at some point. I mean, we don't like to accept that, do we? So not necessarily, as it mentioned, we haven't necessarily killed a human being. But if remember that karma increases. So if we killed an animal and rejoiced in it, and we didn't do anything, we didn't regret it, and we didn't do it because we didn't see that killing as negative. We didn't do anything to destroy that negative karmic imprint. And like the acorn that became an oak tree, and the oak tree that then produced thousands of more acorns and produced a forest, that action, if that negative action, if not seen as negative and not purified, can give a huge result. So I hope that helps, Robin, as an answer to your comment. Of course, it's incredibly sad when negative karma ripens. You know, the Buddha said, I cannot remove your suffering as if I were pulling out a thorn. I cannot wash away your negativities with water. But the Buddha taught us how to purify our negative actions so they don't bring about a result. Yes, it is a little bit frightening because we don't know what we have done in the past. So how do we work with that? When we do our purification practice, we think about the negative actions that we have done. Ideally, we do a short purification practice every evening before we fall asleep, right? And I think I'll look a little bit more into karma next week, and then we'll learn how to do purification practice. But what you can do, as I mentioned before, I'm not sure when you came on board, Robin, but what you can do is, before you go to sleep at night, you just review the day, think about anything negative that you did, generate sincere regret, and then think about the fact that you've been around since the beginning. Your mind stream has gone from lifetime to lifetime to lifetime, right up to this lifetime. And on that mind stream are all the positive and negative karmic imprints. And so you think, okay, there's probably not one single negative action that I haven't created at some point in the past. So I sincerely regret every single one of them. Even though I don't know what they were, I regret them. And from now on, I will do my best to avoid creating any negative karma. And we can use the list of the 10 non-virtues to help us. In the past, we've done all of them. That doesn't mean we're bad people. That means we came under the control of karma and delusion, which doesn't let us off the hook. We still, if we don't purify the negative karma, if we don't see negative actions as wrong, if we're not motivated by loving kindness and compassion, we're not going to feel bad about harming others. So it comes back, I think, on one level to connecting with our innate goodness, our innate kind hearts. They're already there. We don't have to create them. Human beings are basically good. Yeah. So when our goodness is covered over by the clouds of our delusions, We create negative karma, but we're not bad people. I hope that helps. So I'll give it a few more minutes in case there's any other questions, and then we'll dedicate. As I said, feel free. There's no such thing as a stupid question. While we're on this topic, I think Thich Nhat Hanh, the Vietnamese monk, he wrote a lot of beautiful poetry, and he wrote one called Call Me By My True Names, I think, where he talks about, I can't remember the whole poem, but he says, I am the 12-year-old child who is raped and thrown overboard, and I am the sailor who raped that child and threw her overboard. So I think he's talking about that very point, that we have been around for such a long time that there is not one negativity that we haven't created. And then when we feel very overwhelmed by that, we feel regret, then we want to purify. And we remember our innate purity, and we connect with that. And we if we are motivated by loving kindness, which is our innate, Buddha nature, Christ consciousness, whatever you want to call it, if we are connected with that, we're not going to kill, we're not going to steal, we're not going to engage in sexual misconduct, we're not going to lie, and so on and so on and so on. So it's also about acknowledging and connecting with your innate purity again and again and again. So I'd like to finish with the dedication from Bodhisattva's way of life, particularly at this particular, at this time when there's so much fear around with the virus, and there's been a lot of loss of life, an incredible amount of suffering, and the other sufferings that have always been in the world, they're still there. And let's dedicate the positive energy of this morning in this way. May all beings everywhere, plagued by sufferings of body and mind, obtain an ocean of happiness and joy by nature of my merits. That's the merit, the positive energy that we created by, learning from the wisdom of the Buddha. May no living creature suffer, commit evil, or ever fall ill. May no one be afraid or belittled, with a mind weighed down by depression. May the blind see forms and the deaf hear sounds. May those whose bodies are worn with toil be restored on finding repose. May the naked find clothing, the hungry find food. May the thirsty find water and delicious drinks. May the poor find wealth, those weak with sorrow find joy. May the forlorn find hope, constant happiness and prosperity. May there be timely rains and bountiful harvests. May all medicines be effective and wholesome prayers bear fruit. May all who are sick and ill quickly be freed from their ailments, and whatever diseases there are in the world, may they never occur again. May the frightened cease to be afraid, and those bound be freed. May the powerless find power, and may people think of benefiting each other. And this is the wish of the Bodhisattva. For as long as space remains, for as long as sentient beings remain, until then may I too remain, to dispel the miseries of the world. And we can also have that wish. So thank you for joining me, and enjoy the rest of your day. And the best way we can help people is to stay home. And that doesn't mean that we shouldn't help in whatever practical way we can as well. And there we have to use our wisdom to make sure that we're not endangering others with our activities. So thank you very much, and I look forward to, I can't say seeing you, unless we switch over to Zoom, but I look forward to being with you again, and stay safe and well. Thank you so much.